Welcome back, everyone, to the breakdown presented by 9NINE2. Today, we're going to be going over Formula Drift Round 7, Elevated in Utah. We got a couple of battles we're going to be going over, actually 4. We have Tushi versus Hopson we're going to be going over. We have Dean versus Hughes that we're going to be going over, Bakchis and Jones, and as a bonus, we're also going to be going over Bakchis versus Dean, as well as there was a little contact that was going in there. So going into the first battle, we have Tushi and Ben Hopson. All right, so they're taking off. Right off the rip. So right into the first battle, we have some contact. Now, when we have a situation like this, the 3 judges, which were Robin Nishida, we had Brian Egger, and we had Vernon, that were the 3 judges. I wasn't judging in Utah, but, we're going to do this breakdown just so we can give you a little bit more clarity. We can clearly see that there's collision here. Hopson going into Tushi, and what's going to end up happening here is that they're going to have to obviously go over the video and kind of see who's at fault, how are they going to distinguish it. And we're going to get into a little bit how they ended up going in this scenario. Let's see if we can go forward a little bit here. Get a replay. Now, he is allowed to have a decel. Now, you see Tushi comes in. He does get on the brakes. There is a slowdown, but you're allowed to have that because on the map there is a decel in that position. There's actually a decel going into outside zone 1 and then going into outside zone 2. Very slight decels, which plays a big key role here. There isn't any other decels at all on the map or on the layout. See the replay again. You can see, I can see how there's going to be a little bit of maybe discussion on like where is this going to go, which I think is a really good example going into this, because when it came down to who was at fault for this battle, I'm going to back it up a little bit here. The judges saw it very different ways. All right. We had Robbie Nishida that put the fault on Ben Hopson, saying that he came in way too fast and the collision happened just a little bit before outside zone 1. Right. We also have Vernon, who said that Tuguchi's decel was just a little bit too hard. He gets on the front brakes. We can see here, and I can see where they're both coming from. The initiation happens. You can already see right here, Tugushi's definitely getting on the front brakes, trying to like position himself, slowing down. Now, is he allowed to slow down there? Yes, he is allowed to slow down. There is a decel marker that's on the layout there. I think where Vernon's coming from is that it was too hard of a decel, which caused the collision on Tugushi's end in the lead. You can see here the collision actually happens way earlier on. Back up a little bit. And you can see he's on the brakes, then the collision happens. All right, so Byrne is seeing it from that position. He's seeing it where he's going to put the fault on Tushi because he feels like he's on it just way too hard, decelling outrageously too much, and that's what causes the hit. Now, Robbie Nishida sees it differently. He thinks that Ben is coming way too fast, and because he's being a little bit too aggressive, there's actually is what causes the contact there. And it was a pretty aggressive one. He hit him pretty hard. Now, when it comes to Brian Egger, Brian looks at it like it was shared fault. And I can only imagine that it was more so Tushi was just slowing down maybe a bit too hard, and then Ben was coming way too fast, and it was a perfect storm, and it created for a shared fault scenario. So in a scenario like that, you have one judge going one way, the other judge going the other, and one completely split in the middle. Essentially, at this point, whatever happened in this half of the battle is a wash. You know what I mean? So now we're going to have to go to the second half of the battle and see what happens there. And what if it could happen, it's going to happen in these battles, you know what I mean? And you'll see as we transpire what happens in this battle. Here we have the initiation from Ben Hopson. He gets on throttle, he gets into the zone. You can see that Tushi is a little bit low on angle here. You can see there that this pretty much already is straightened at this point. I mean, I'm sure it's not official at the moment. He reinitiates. Ben is pretty much doing great right here. Now you can see there's a miscalculation here by Taguchi. Clearly a straighten at that point. But then we also have Ben, who goes completely off track. All right. Again, perfect scenario. In this situation, what happens is, because on the first half of the battle, it was shared fault because all of the judges were split in their decision there. Going into this second half of the battle and then seeing what transpired here, you can see why we're going to be going one more time. But we'll watch this again here so we can see. The initiation happens. Ben's doing good. He gets into outside zone 1. You can see at this point Taguchi is definitely straightening up there way too much, in my opinion. And Ben is off to the races at this point. Transition happens. Again, I think Taguchi's just lost in the sauce over there. Ben maybe overcalculates that transition going into outside zone 3, ends up going wide, goes off track. So we have sheer fault first half. We have double zeros in the second half. And that is clearly going to make us go one more time in that scenario. Now, obviously, the big thing when it comes to this battle was the hits. You know what I mean? I can see where the judges were coming from. I can see why Robbie leaned with having Ben having at fault. I can see why Vernon visually and dynamically was looking at what was happening to Taguchi's vehicle in the lead and decided to put the blame on him. And I can totally see why Brian ended up going shared fault when it came to his judgment when it came to this battle here. When it came to what I thought, at first I thought it was on Taguchi's fault. But when I got to look at the video a little bit more and review it, I do feel like it was shared fault as well too. A lot was going on there. But in any case, we ended up having a double zero in this battle. We ended up going one more time. So let's check out the next battle that goes there. All right, we have Taguchi doing a really good job. Gets into outside zone 1. Doesn't really have a lot of angle going into outside zone 1. Goes into outside zone 2. Ben does a good job. Looks like he's chopping the line a little bit just to get proximity. Gets into the pocket, comes back a little bit. Transition comes in. Taguchi does a good job going into outside zone 3. Looking really good. Now, dynamically from this view, it looks like Ben was doing what he needs to do to get close. But let's look at the bird's eye view and kind of see what's going on here. All right, so we can see Taguchi's definitely in. Gets into outside zone 1 a little bit late, and you can see he does get into the zone. But what I notice is just the lack of angle that's going on here. And the lack of angle means like you are taking some angle out, and when you do that, you are able to go faster. But he does get into the zone. Gets into outside zone 2. Ben does a good job. You can see Ben is doing a good job matching the angle of Taguchi. You can see that he's matching the line, but obviously he's going to try to get the proximity. And I do believe he tries to cheat a little bit here, as in he goes up, moves over, and then comes back to try to get into the pocket. There you can see Ben goes up, cheats the line a little bit in order to get into the pocket, takes some angle out, but you can see Taguchi's off to the races. And then Ben gets back into the pocket, but I think he missed times getting on throttle again, and then gets stretched by Taguchi. Taguchi goes into the transition. Looks like he's midline into outside zone 3. It looks like Ben does cut the line a little bit to get proximity, but then tucks right into the pocket. A little bit of a bump there maybe at the end. So overall, I would say that Taguchi's lead line is a decent line. And I do think Ben is doing a good job in the chase. He does have some inconsistencies, and he's making some compromises in order to gain some proximity. I think he does do a good job of that. I do like the way Taguchi is doing his lead run. The only thing I kind of wish there would have been a little bit more of was a little bit more angle going into outside zone 1, because it kind of seems when you're taking that shallow angle, it allows you to kind of pick up a little bit more speed and get out of outside zone 1 quicker. But, you know, this is drifting, and we want to go sideways, you know what I mean? So it was just a little bit more angle is what I would have liked out of Taguchi on that. All right, so we have Ben taking off, goes into the initiation, deep into outside zone 1. That looks really good from here. Good transition in. Taguchi's cheats the line a little. Oh, looks like a little bit more. Ben gets into the zone. Smooth in the lead. So from this point of view, like, this is looking really good for Ben, in my opinion. Looking really good for Ben. But again, that's just from this point of view. So let's look at it from the bird's eye view and see what we got going on there. But I definitely like the aggressiveness, the fluidity of it. I like that Ben gets in. He does get in a little bit late, but I do like that he's definitely pouring on a lot more angle on outside zone 1 than Taguchi was. Taguchi is taking a shallower line. You can see he's not matching the angle, right? Because it would be right in here. He's not matching the line, or else he'd be a little bit more over here. And proximity obviously isn't there. Now he's taking angle out in order to gain proximity. You can see he starts gaining proximity there, so he is sacrificing in order to get something. Puts him in a good position, gets into the transition. Now you can see here, Taguchi definitely cuts the line massively. Now I understand that we want proximity, but if you're going to cheat the line this aggressively, I feel like that has to get weighed upon. You know what I mean? You're cutting the line aggressively high up. So you're trading the line, the angle, solely for cutting the line and getting proximity. All right, so that is an error on Taguchi, at least from my point of view. Ben, you can see he's in the zone. He's in outside zone 2. He's doing what he needs to do. So he gets on throttle. Looks like he comes out a little bit. It looks like Taguchi, he did cut the line, but he cuts it in order to get the proximity. Now he's trying to tuck back into the pocket. But Ben looks like he's off. He's off and going with this. See, Taguchi still trying to manage to get in there again. See, Ben does get a little shallow in outside zone 2, but I still feel like he's a tire or so in. Pours the angle on. Sets himself up for the transition. Kazooie again cuts the line. So not matching angle, definitely not matching the line, but he's cutting the line a little bit here in order to get proximity. So there is some compromises there. Ben had some compromises in the chase. Taguchi had some compromises in the chase as well too. But ultimately, it's really going to come down to the lead runs when it comes to this. We're going to see the side-by-side here. All right, so you can see. And you can see here, that's where I'm at. I'm kind of looking at it like, I like that Ben is in outside zone 1. I like that he has more angle. And when Ben is chasing, you can see he's matching the angle that Taguchi has set. So Taguchi's doing a good job getting in outside zone 1. I like that he's getting there. It's just the angle is my whole thing. And like you can see, Taguchi is definitely cutting the line a little bit here and sacrificing some things in order to gain this proximity, which is fair game, but it's something that has to be noted, right? The transition happens. See, now here's the other difference. We can see Taguchi cuts the line up top. Ben is where he needs to be in the lead. Taguchi's where he needs to be in the lead, and Ben a little bit deeper. I like that he's matching the line. I like that he's matching the angle. He's not matching the proximity, so this is what we're going to see where he cheats a little bit in order to get to that point. Taguchi cheats early on before getting into the zone in order to get to that point. We do see the error by Ben in the lead there where he shimmies out a little bit. Taguchi decides to get into the pocket with the line and the angle established by Ben in the lead. Ben now halfway through opposite end, right? He's cutting the line a little bit in order to gain that proximity. You see the transition goes in. I feel like Ben sacrifices a little bit to get the proximity. Taguchi sacrifices maybe a little bit more. So there's definitely a lot of things to take in consideration here. Now, we're going to see the judges' result in just a second there. So we have a one more time decision placed by the judges. Now, the way that I can see that is that we have both lead runs that were good leads. All right, the judges looked at that. All three judges went one more time here so we can see that all the judges can see that there was really good lead runs. And when it came to the chases, there was errors on both ends. You know what I mean? Like, we can see one error, but we can't just focus on one error that one person does. We have to take everything in consideration and then compare and contrast. And that's what the judges did in this scenario. The only thing is, the way I kind of looked at it is, I actually, in this scenario, I actually gave the win to Ben, because I think Ben, in the lead, he had a good lead. Taguchi had a good lead, right? The chases, I think they both canceled each other out because there was errors. So then it comes to this, it always goes down to the lead run first. But when you're looking at the leads, Taguchi has a good lead run, Ben has a good lead run, but I feel like Ben has a good lead run and he has more angle. Does he have an error in the lead run in outside zone 2? Yes, he does. So that error probably was taken in consideration by the judges when they made their judgment call. Had it been me, I think I would have went with Ben for the win on that one, just by having more angle. And to me, it looked a lot more dynamic, and it looked a lot better. You know what I mean? But even if that would have been the scenario, it still would have went one more time, because it would have been two judges one more time and one judge going with Ben. So that kind of gives you a little clarity on what was going on here. We can clearly see this isn't too complicated of a call, I don't think. Two good lead runs, not so good chase runs, a little give and take from in between. I understand why they ended up going one more time. All right, so we are going to the last battle between Taguchi and Ben. All right, so we're going into outside zone 1. Taguchi does a good job here. Ben doing a good job staying into his shadow, gets into the pocket a little bit. Good, clean battle so far. Taguchi deep into outside zone 2, transition smooth. You can see Ben cheats the line a little bit in order to get proximity. Does achieve the proximity. There's nothing wrong with that. I definitely, I'm going to back up just a little bit here so we can see that. Like, I understand why somebody would cheat a little bit that way. You know what I mean? He sees like, okay, I'm matching line, I'm matching angle, but I need to get proximity. I'm going to surge forward a little bit. So he takes angle out, surges forward, gets a little bit closer, and then sets himself back up into the pocket. Now, I'm not saying that's what you should be doing. Obviously, the ideal situation is you're able to calculate and set yourself in the pocket when you're supposed to, and not have to do a little cheat maneuver or anything like that. But that's fair game. You can see Taguchi gets into outside zone 1, right? Gets into outside zone 1 again. We can see this same thing again. Not too much angle, but he is in outside zone 1. Transition comes in. Ben does a good job of getting into the pocket here. Matching his angle like that. He's matching his angle. He's matching his line. He's set right into the pocket, and he's about a half car length away from him. That is a solid chase right there. There's some wiggle room just in case something funky happens. Like, really good line right there. Really good chase. Good lead line. Good chase line. You see there? You see how like there was some wiggle room there? There was some wiggling going on. But because there was a little bit of space there, there's a little bit of buffer space to do what they needed to do. All right. All right, Ben goes into the initiation, deep into outside zone 1. Looks like he dropped a tire there. Transition going in. Taguchi doing a good job getting into the pocket. Looks like Ben, just even from this angle, you can kind of see that he's maybe a little bit shallow in outside zone 2. Gets deep into outside zone 2 there. Good transition. Goes into outside zone 3. Taguchi takes a little bit of angle out, but he stays mostly into the pocket. All right, Ben doing a good job. Gets into outside zone 1. Definitely looks like he drops a tire there for sure. So that's definitely going to get weight on him there. Transition goes in, gets into outside zone 2, right around this area here. Let's back up just a little bit. Gets into outside zone 2, correct. But as soon as he gets into outside zone 2, he's maybe in a 3 feet, 4 feet tops. Comes out of outside zone 2 and misses a substantial bit of outside zone 2. Eventually gets back into outside zone 2 pretty deep. Gets back onto the line. Taguchi is doing a fantastic job in the chase, adapting to everything that's going on with Ben in front of him. So that is a very good thing to look at there. He dives in a little bit. He dives in a little aggressively. Now, this is a dangerous scenario. Again, we're impeding the front wheels a little bit, or the front of the car, so it's a chance. It's not probably something that we recommend, you know what I mean? But he's risking it for the biscuit. Does take some angle out, but that also gets into consideration. Like, we understand that he's able to keep proximity, but look what he's sacrificing here. He is sacrificing the line. He is sacrificing the angle, and he's essentially cutting in outside zone 3 in order to get the proximity. So it looks like Ben gets into outside zone 2, outside zone 1 a little bit earlier, but he does have that drop in the tire. So one tire off in outside zone 1. Taguchi's there, dives into the pocket. Again, and you're seeing Taguchi does get into outside zone 1, does get into outside zone 2. It just goes to show you the importance that it is to have a good lead. If you put down a good lead, the probability of you winning your battle goes through the roof tenfold. You know what I mean? And this is a good example of it here. Yeah. So you can see through the side-by-side, both drivers definitely make some sacrifices in the chase, right? But when it comes to the lead, we can clearly see in this one that Taguchi has a better lead run. And based off of that, is we're going to get Taguchi getting the win here. Now, it was a long overall battle. We can get some little feedback here from Nishida, who overall Taguchi did a better lead run and was able to stay with proximity and line, and was able to be a little bit more consistent in the lead when they compared everything together. And that's something that's joined together from all the judges there. It's just, when you're in the lead, it's very important that you place the car where it needs to be. As a lead driver, there's no one in front of you. There's nothing in your way. You have a clean canvas to be able to go out there and put down the ideal lead run. So when you compare these two lead runs, you can see that there is a huge error from Ben in outside zone 1 and a huge error in outside zone 2 by missing a huge portion of it. And that's what's going to ultimately weigh in the favor of Taguchi in this battle. So I completely understand where that's coming from. But like I said, on that second one more time, I probably would have went with Ben, but that wouldn't have changed the result. We probably would have still been here, and we would have had the same outcome there. So it just goes to show you, again, judge sport. Like I've always said in all the other past episodes, it's a judge sport. People have their perspectives on it. There's 4 judges. You know what I mean? So you're going to get a little variety when it comes to that. But that was the battle between Taguchi and Ben Hopson. Taguchi ended up taking the win and ended up going on. Ben doing a great job. I think this was really good for him, to be honest, for him to be out there and driving it over and over and over again. I think just the more seat time that he gets in that car, the more comfortable he's going to get. And Taguchi is absolutely just a monster of a driver. I have said before in other episodes, I do kind of wish that him and Manoa had a little bit more angle in certain spots, but they're definitely starting to get used and acclimated to a lot of the things here. So now going on to the next battle, we have James Dean and Dylan Hughes. Now I do believe they got into a little bit of a bump of a contact in outside zone 2, I believe. But we're going to check that out, give a little clarity when it comes to this. I can understand how some people can look at it the other way, but we are going to give some clarity on what was talked about in the driver's meeting when it comes to outside zone 2. All right, so we have James Dean takes off in the lead, Dylan in the chase. James doing a good job in outside zone 1, gets on throttle, transition. Dylan trying to drop into the pocket there, trying to close proximity. Up, James drops a tire, adjusts a little bit there. Dylan trying to do what he needs to do. You can see sacrifices a little bit to get into the pocket. Then he starts matching up again. All right, so you can see James does a good job starting to get into outside zone 1. He misses a little bit of it. Then he gets fully in. Dylan does a good job of staying right around there. A little bit more angle would have been nice. A little bit more angle there from Dylan as well. Trying to dive in, a little shallow. Now, this is an independent error by Dean. You can see he drops a tire there. By dropping a tire, it allows Hughes to close that proximity that he wasn't able to achieve earlier on. I give a lot of props to Dylan for adapting to that little bobble that was going on there with Dean in the lead. Really good. Closes the proximity, dives in again, takes a little bit of angle out to dive in. Gets into the pocket again. Good job. And then you have Dean in outside zone 3 doing a good job, doing a fantastic job in the lead. I think Dylan did a good job. He did put up a good fight. Like I said, outside zone 1 does lack a little bit of angle. I think he was maybe just trying to fill out the situation. Starts to get in, capitalizes on what Dean does in the lead as a mistake, closes proximity, then he starts to like shimmy up, cuts the line a little bit there, tries to wiggle his way into proximity. But again, the reason why Dylan was able to do that, and he had the time to do that, and he had the confidence to do that, is because Dean put a really good lead rundown, aside from the little error that he had in outside zone 2. All right, so we're going to turn it around. We have Dylan Hughes in the lead now. Dylan goes, little lack of angle there, and up. A little bit of contact there. And that's all she wrote. All right, so we're going to have to break this down a little bit more on what exactly happened in that scenario. So we have Dylan coming in. He initiates. Dylan does a really good job, initiates, gets into outside zone 1, a little shallow, but he's in there early. Gets right on the line, takes a little bit of angle out. Dean doing a really good job of really sticking it right there. Now the transition happens, and this is the issue. Now, we can see here that Dylan is getting into outside zone 2 now. All right. Now, it was discussed in the drivers' meeting. They laid down the ground rules and said, hey, listen, when you get into this zone, we need you to get on throttle. All right, because the chase driver is expecting you to get on throttle this port at this section. We need you to get on throttle as early as possible when you get into the zone so you can accelerate. Here we can see that James is definitely doing just that. He's applying the pressure. You can see he's on throttle from here. He's on throttle through the transition, on throttle, on throttle, on throttle. He's coming. Dylan transitions, and he's off throttle. Off throttle.
Looks like he might be a touch late getting on throttle. I mean, there is a small.
That's rough. That's rough. So we can see here, he sets himself up. Dylan sets himself beautifully for outside zone 2, but he doesn't get on throttle enough. Or soon enough, excuse me, soon enough. And then there's a collision here. And that ended up severely weighing things over into the direction of Dean. We can see a different angle here. Dylan's doing a good job. Transitions. Here comes a transition. And we can see here not lighting off, a big issue. Dean is expecting him to be committed. Look how far we're already in outside zone 2. Little bump happens there, goes off track. And the lap ends up coming to an end there. So they'll be replaying that there. Let me pull up just a little note here from the judges as well. Now, coming from Brian Eggert, getting some feedback from him when it came to this, is Hughes floated the car just a little bit too long in the lead, and the contact was a result of that. All right, now you can see here, while it's up here, we do have the layout. All right, so this green line is the ideal lead line. So if you are the lead driver, or you're watching the lead, this is the line that essentially the lead driver ideally wants to be able to run. All right, we do have a decel marker there, and we do have another decel here. You can see that this is well into outside zone 2. There's no reason for there to be any deceleration, and because Dylan did not get on throttle fast enough when he got into outside zone 3, there was a decel cause an accident, cause contact, and that's how they ended up weighing that decision when it came there. See if we can get a little bit more info here. Now, like I said, Brian was saying that Hughes floated the car just a little bit too much, and that was a result of that, of the collision that we saw there. Just to get a little bit more clarification here on that. Yeah, floated his car just a little bit too much. And the result of that was the contact was the result in which, unfortunately, nudged his car off the edge of the track and caused him to go over rotate just enough to him to lose drift and earn an incomplete. So he did get bumped off track. That bump ended up happening because he was late on throttle going into outside zone 2 and ended up bumping him off track. There was an incomplete. And that's all she wrote in that one. Now, I think the clarity that needs to be there is as you're coming into this zone right here, lit off. The judges discussed in the driver's meeting, we need them to be light off at that point. There was none of that going on. Dean did what he could to avoid the accident, obviously, but he's coming in really hard. Expected Dean to be committed. Didn't happen. It happens sometimes, you know what I mean? Maybe maybe Dylan thought he was set up. Maybe he could feel that there was too much momentum going into the zone. Wasn't comfortable lighting off. Maybe he thought if he lit off, it would take him off track. But unfortunately, those miscalculations at that moment in outside zone 2 really weighs against him when the contact ended up happening there. All three of the judges are going with James in this scenario. Completely understand where they're coming from, as everything we just discussed. Now, the next battle we have lined up is Jeff Jones and Bakchis. All right, so we have Jeff in the lead. We have Odie in the chase. Jeff does a good job getting into outside zone 1. Good line going into outside zone 2, but Odie is right there knocking on his door. Good solid lead line by Jones. Really good line. Odie dives in a little bit there. Oh, shallows up really hard. Really, really hard. Yeah, looks like he surged forward a little bit, had to back off. Interesting to see how they're going to weigh that, obviously, right? So you can see Jeff Jones does a really good job getting into outside zone 1. I like his line. I like his angle. I like his transition. His line going into outside zone 2 is looking really good. Odie's just right there with him, getting into the pocket. I think Odie's doing a really good job in that one. I want to be a little bit closer there. Transition comes in, takes a shallower line in, tries to get back into the pocket. I think that's where that miscalculation happened, at least for Odie. You can see right here, the transition happens. He gets right there. He's in the pocket, and he's about it. I think he comes off throttle for a second. Angle starts to come out of angle. Gets back on throttle. Surges him forward a little bit. And for the remainder of outside zone 3, you can see that he's cutting a little bit in order to get that proximity. Yeah. Definitely not perfect for Bakchis in the chair. You can see what he was trying to do. He's trying to calculate. He's trying to time Jeff Jones. It seems like Jeff Jones is maybe a little bit slower, not intentionally. Just Odie's car is really fast. You know what I mean? Oh, a little bit of contact there. Bakchis gets into outside zone 1. Doesn't seem like he has too much angle on outside zone 1. Shimmies gets into outside zone 2. Oof, man. And Jones is just... Oh. See, Jeff Jones goes off a bit. Yeah. So we can definitely see that Odie's car is a monster. It's really fast. After outside zone 2, you can definitely see how he was able to gap Jones. But the biggest factor is going to be Jeff Jones. You can see he goes off, 2 tires off, going into outside zone 3. You can see there is a little bit of a contact there. Just to give you guys some clarity on this contact, the lead driver has right of way, so the chase driver is supposed to give the lead driver the space that they need in order to initiate. Obviously, there was a little bumping here. I don't think it was too drastic enough, so they just kind of kept on rolling with it, which I'm all about. See, Odie gets into outside zone 1. Jones is in it. Look, he's there. Odie, you can see, again, takes a little bit. Odie's in the zone, but he's also doing like what I saw at Taguchi's, where there's not a whole lot of angle there, right? He gets into outside zone 2. All about that. Joe Jones doing a good job, but like right here, right in the middle of outside zone 2, that's when we really get to see just the raw power of Odie's car just taking off. Like there's just no way. Now, let's play very close attention to Jones going into outside zone 3. At this point, I think he might be 1 tire off there, but if we go just a little bit further, we can see 1, 2, maybe 3 tires off, but I'm going to go with definitely 2 tires off there. I think that might be 3 tires off there. Yeah, so we can definitely see how that's going to definitely penalize Odie in that scenario. You see the replay here. Yeah, there's just... I mean, look at the gap that's established here at this point. You know what I mean? And then you can see the separation. You can see the tires that go off there. Rough. Odie gets all 3 votes from the judges. Completely understand where that's coming from. You can see the tires that went off in the chase. Huge error there, but I think Jones did a really good job. He put up a really good fight. You know what I mean? Just so we can touch a little bit of it here to get some other clarity there. When it comes to Brian Eggert, speaking about the Jones and Bakchis battle, Jones dropped 3 tires. So Brian looked at it, 3 tires were dropped in outside zone 3 in the chase, resulting in an incomplete for Jones, and I chose Bakchis. So again, that was a fairly simple battle there. I really thought I saw Jones drop not drop any tires there, and I don't know why I thought otherwise. But when I got to see all this again, I wasn't there. I wasn't there watching it or anything like that. I was back in Philadelphia, or here in Philadelphia. But man, when I got to see it again, I was just pretty cut and dry on that one. You know what I mean? Definitely see that. But now that we know who won that battle, right? We get some clarity on what happened with Jones and Bakchis. We're pretty straightforward. We're going to get into the bonus battle. I wasn't even going to review this, to be honest with you. But it was mentioned, right? And I was like, you know what? I think people do want to talk about this. You know what I mean? I will say, I think for Utah, like, I don't know. I think it was a good round. You know what I mean? That outside zone one was a little wild. I ain't gonna lie. You know what I mean? Like, I did not think it was gonna come out that way, to be honest with you. Yeah, glad I wasn't there having to deal with that one, boys. You know what I mean? Like, but not for nothing. I think everyone did a really good job of figuring that thing out and getting through there. But you know, I think the only battle that I think had a lot of questions around it, that kept on getting brought up to me was this one, actually. You know what I mean? There was alleged collision, so we're going to watch it again, between Odie and James Dean, specifically outside zone 2. So let's go into it. All right, Odie in the lead. Odie does a good job getting into outside zone 1. Dean is just there, man. Like, Odie, good job. So far, it looks like he's deep into outside zone 2 as well, too. Good, clean line. Transition comes in. Dean's reading him like a book. Gets right into the pocket again. Oh, drops a tire a little bit. Damn. Dude, talk about risking it for the biscuit. Dean is... That's awesome. All right, let's look at the over for a review of that. All right, so you can see Odie does a good job getting into outside zone 1. Look at that. You know, I mean, right, you know, middle-ish, but good job. Gets in there. Dean is nuts, dude. You are nuts, dog. So you can see Odie gets into outside zone 1. A little bit more angle. It's all a little bit more angle. But I get it. Going that shallow lets you go fast. I get it. Transition comes through. Odie, good job into outside zone 3. You can see Dean does a really good job of mimicking the angle that Odie set in place, right? And he's on the right line. He's in the pocket, half car length, not too far up, not too far back. Good proximity. You see how he's not like in a Y? You see how it's like this, not like this? That's what we're looking for. I feel like a lot of times you guys want to see more of this, or like way down here, or like coming from out of nowhere in one of these things. Like, it's this, bro. It's this right there. You know what I mean? That the proof is in the pudding. There's your dude. Right there, doing it up. That. Good stuff. Now, props to Odie, because Odie's allowing Dean to do that, because he's putting down such an amazing lead run. Yeah, look at that. Dives into the pocket. God, dude. Comes in, dives into the pocket there. That is, again, matching the line, matching the angle, and has proximity. 3 things. Drops the tire a little bit. Odie's just murdering it. Yeah, that was insane. Odie was definitely on one this round. Absolutely just on one. You know what I mean? He just had so much confidence out there driving, at least from what we saw, right? You know what I mean? So, because of the tire drop, all right, I would say, again, I wasn't there, but I would say that Odie has the advantage. He has an advantage right now because he put down a killer lead run. So right now, going into the second half of the battle, Odie has the advantage. Dean in the lead, Odie in the chase. The initiation happens. Dean gets into outside zone 1, looks really good, committed. Odie right there, and then, all right, so from that angle, I thought he hit him. From that angle. All right, let's watch it from the other camera. I was back home like, damn, dude, he hit him. I thought he hit him, and because he hit him, he made him go off track. At least in at that moment, right? So we'll watch the overhead view. The initiation happens. Dean gets into the zone now. Odie's right there. Odie's ready, bro. Odie is ready. All right, dives into the pocket. Let's see what we can see here. You can see, all right, so let's look at everything. Let's look at everything that's going on here, all right? You can see Dean gets into outside zone 2. Correct, that's what he's supposed to do. Odie's on a slightly shallower line, but you can see he's looking to get into the pocket. Fair. He's sacrificing a little bit in order to get to the pocket. Fair. All right, now you can kind of see Dean starts to come out of outside zone 2. All right, takes a little bit of angle out. Odie's still there, still committed. It starts to get a little sketchy here. All right, so it looks like here, all right, we can see he comes out of having a lot of angle, shallows up a little bit, gets a lot more angle. So now we're seeing that Dean ends up getting more angle there. And it looks like from that angle, it looked like Odie like maybe brake checked right before there could have been a collision, which kind of threw him back a little bit. Now it's watching in real time. I don't know. That's... see? Man. I don't know. It's... wow. Off the naked eye, I was looking at it, I was like, they definitely had contact. You know what I mean? And if that's the case, that completely changes the outcome. But I think this is the one that did it for me. All right, I think this is the one where I'm like, maybe he didn't hit him. Gets close. Let's go. And then here, right, I feel like he brake checks. You can see he brakes the car dynamically adjusts a little bit. James throttles up. I think that's the one that did it for me. That's the one where I'm like, I don't think there was a hit. Right? It was close. It was close. Let's watch it again. I'm gonna have you guys watching this over and over again. I just don't see it. It looks like it from the other point of view, but here it looks like he gets close. There's a change, and Dean gets on throttle. I don't know. I wish I would have been. I wish I was there so I could ask James, like, "Yo, what happened? Did you feel anything?" Or now, when they end up going over this from the judges' results, later on we end up having Vernon that gets on and explains what happened. They reviewed the footage and they ultimately came to the decision that there wasn't any contact when it came to this scenario. Obviously, they had a lot more time to scrutinize it, look at it, and all that. From this point of view, right? From this point of view, I thought there was contact. I thought there was contact. But from the other point of view, that's what got me kind of thinking I don't think there was contact due to how the cars were reacting after Odie had that little adjustment and matching the angle. I can assume that that's why the judges were going that way, but ultimately Vernon ended up coming onto the radio and explaining on air that there was no contact. They reviewed the footage and they were able to distinguish that there was no contact when it came to that scenario. So, because there was no contact, that means what Dean ended up doing in this dirt drop right here, that miscalculation, gaining angle again, and then having that dirt drop, that was an independent error on him. All right, so when you put all of that together, the first half of the battle, and then what happened here in the second half of the battle, we get our result, which is Odie Bakchis ended up getting the win. All three judges. Again, I totally see where their judges are coming from when they're making that call. Again, like I just told you, I looked at it, and in real time, I thought there was definitely a hit. But luckily, we do have different perspectives, and when you look at from the other angle, you can see that there wasn't a hit. I feel like that's going to be something that's always going to be scrutinized. There's always going to be people that look at calls like that a little bit differently. I'll be honest with you, as a judge, I always keep on trying to think now of ways that we can maybe distinguish, is this acceptable? Isn't this acceptable? But in this scenario, that was completely taken away because the judges were able to come to the decision that there was no contact when it came to that. But it just goes to show you that, we're really starting to get in there and into some pretty serious scenarios when it comes to a lot of these battles. So Odie Bakchis ended up getting the win, taking Dean out, and then if you guys saw that, you could see Odie took it all the way there. So really awesome battles there. I think it was a pretty good one. I don't think there was too many questionable calls or anything like that in Utah. This was a pretty easy one, you know what I mean? So I think the boys kind of lucked out a little bit on that one, you know what I mean? But this one was definitely one that was, and I didn't think this was too much a big of a deal, but it ended up popping up more and more. But all in all, I think it was really good, and it was enjoyable seeing the battles out there and seeing Pro Spec and seeing Pro out there doing their thing. But yeah, that outside zone one, I can see how people were, and I like to be transparent. I was watching everybody out there talking about it and saying like, man, like, what's going on here? But it was cool to see that these guys are all professional drivers and they're all really good and they were able to make it work. And it just goes to show you the caliber of drivers that all these guys are. So, but yeah, those are all the battles that we have there. I hope you enjoyed the explanations and the little breakdown that we did. Nothing too crazy, at least I don't think. The next one is going to be in Irwindale. I will be one of the judges again, so I will be in California for that one. And I will see you guys next time on the breakdown. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, talk smack, tell us how awful we are. You know what I mean? I really do appreciate it. The worst thing that could happen is if you guys didn't comment and you didn't express how you guys feel. So I'm all about it, whether you love it, whether you hate it. You're going to keep on watching it. So we'll see you guys next time.